my mama got me born there not too long ago. I started to know what was going on all around my soul. And at the age of 5 I started noticing that I was alive. The only thing that the future brought me was having to see a lot of people being unhappy, cause they struggled to survive in this difficult life that they had every day and night. My childhood got really messed up cause my parents had fallen apart, and the next part was worse than I thought, cause I had to start to change myself. A subject called trying to live well when I pretty much live on my only self. Love and care was funny, really rare, and that's the thing that made me prepare for the worst that was about to come. Cause I knew that my life was a lot of order and there was no doubt going on, cause my own dad started beating me up. And thank God that I ain't dumb, cause my head was the only spot that my dad like picking on. In the early years that have followed me, in the early years that I had to see, in the early years that was meant to be, in the early years God waiting for me, in the early years that have followed me, in the early years that I had to see, in the early years that was meant to be, in the early years God waiting for me. Suffering, struggling and recovering was the only name that I always had to hear. It seemed very unreal cause I went through a lot of things out of the 10 years that I lived. Even though I was a kid, I went through more things than I do has really blended. And I was sick of the game that I had to play every other day, but I couldn't quit. It was the only way to stop all the pain that I had to inhale. Mostly every time a dream would pass by, getting stuck in my head, picture me being in a scene where I had a good life to represent. The more it came to me, the worse I felt, so I stopped reminiscing, looking in the future for a better living. Anywhere really well, and thank God that it didn't come again. Things were very rough back then, it made it really hard to understand why the everyday life wasn't going so well. So I started hustling all around me for the money just to eat, and became the one thing that I always did in the street with the fake friends that were incomplete and actions that it did. In the early years that have followed me, in the early years that I had to see, in the early years that was meant to be, in the early years God waiting for me, in the early years that have followed me, in the early years that I had to see, in the early years that was meant to be, in the early years God waiting for me. My nickname was Mr. Trouble cause the people on my block would start a rumble, cause I made them all have to suffer from whatever it was that I had to offer. When the payback came, the luck wasn't on my side, cause a lot of homicide was going through my mind. When they all said you lie about things that won't fly, but I had to fight for my pride. I didn't know why, but in a moment like this, you have to protect whatever it defend and make sure that it keep it true to yourself until it comes to an end. Never drop your guard and be prepared for the hell on earth that ain't so swell, cause life ain't always perfect. That's why you gotta find be direct with the things that I wanna inject in the circle of life that you wanna protect. In the early years that have followed me, in the early years that I had to see, in the early years that was meant to be, in the early years God waiting for me, in the early years that have followed me, in the early years that I had to see, in the early years that was meant to be, in the early years God waiting for me.